Hello and welcome back to Center Webcast. This is the COVID-19 in Indiana County edition. This is episode 19. Today's Thursday, May 7th. I am excited about an exciting program today. We have an Interfaith edition. We have a number of faith leaders here from around the community to talk about how faith leaders are leading their folks through this pandemic and what kind of supports are there and what folks can do to sort of reach out to folks. As usual, I'm joined by Dr. Sybil Moore, my co-host. Dr. Brandon Vick is on Zoom and Facebook production, and special thanks today for sure to Quintina Thomas, who's in the background there and also on the production for this program. Today, our guests are Pastor Melvin Jenkins from Victory Christian Assembly, the Reverend Elizabeth Mount, from the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Indiana, Pastor John Ditter of the Homer City Alliance Church, Pastor Judah Thomas, the Word of Grace Church, and then we'll have a segment with Sarah Stewart, the freelance journalist of the New York Post, and also of the local Hawkeye, who's going to have a case study on local government transparency here around Indiana with regards to issues happening in Whites Woods. So we're excited about that interview. The mission of the Center for Community Growth is to lead individuals and organizations in and around Indiana County, advancing social, racial, gender, LGBTQIA, economic, and environmental justice. This COVID-19 Indiana County webcast is a new regular broadcast to keep you informed these weeks in the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the last 4 weeks, we've interviewed folks from around the state, including elected leaders, appointed leaders, and local heroes, including folks who are making masks from here to California. All of these episodes are available for replay on YouTube, so check out the Center for Community Growth there and subscribe. Each one of those interviews is available there. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Moore, who has the privilege of facilitating a roundtable with some faith leaders around. Dr. Moore, it's on to you.
Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today and to lead this discussion. I know for myself, faith is a major part of my belief, of my growing up and my upbringing. And I'm very, very excited to be here with everyone today. First, I'd like to start off with a question. Can you tell us, everybody that's here, just a little bit about yourself and your background as it relates to your faith traditions? We'll start with Pastor Jay.
Hi, everybody. This is Melvin Jenkins, and I guess I can talk a little bit about my faith since it's been going on for such a long time. I came to Indiana, Pennsylvania in 1988 to start Voices of Joy Gospel Choir on campus. I had already been involved with campus ministry. Actually, I kind of was part of the evangelical Christian movement back in the 70s and 80s at Penn State. And then from Penn State came to Indiana, started the choir, and ultimately it kind of morphed into Victory Christian Assembly, which has been located at the same spot, 418 Church Street here in town. And, you know, we're just a non-denominational Christian fellowship. Our primary outreach has been towards students, although we do have a good number of community members actively involved as well. But we've been going on since 1990. Of course, obviously, we'll talk about the COVID parts and the adjustments and the changes. But yeah, the ministry has functioned very well. We have a pretty good media presence on YouTube and on Facebook, and also you see our website there. So I guess really that's about all I have to say. Non-denominational evangelical Christians doing our thing in Indiana.
Wonderful, thank you. And the newly installed Reverend, Elizabeth Mount for First UU. First of all, congratulations on your new installation. How are you today?
Thanks. Ordination, and it's wonderful to be here with you today. I'm feeling good about life and the world and ordination. It's been a really interesting journey for us moving to online worship, and especially thinking about these things like our larger rites of passage and how that works online. I'm a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and just recently moved here to Indiana, Pennsylvania back in September. So I am new to the town, not new to Appalachia. Before seminary, I worked in North Carolina and that southern region of Appalachia in coal and in work with immigrant communities in that area. And so it's really nice to be back in Appalachia and working with folks, once again, who are involved in justice that comes from their faith and doing deep faith work and helping one another in the community during this time.
Wonderful, thank you. Congratulations again with your ordination. I'm Pastor John Ditter from Homer City Alliance Church.
It's great to be here. I'm part of the Christian and Missionary Alliance, also some maybe shortened it to CMA or CNMA. I've been part of the city, or I've been in the Homer City community for about 2.5 years now. I was actually born and raised in Wisconsin and then moved to Pennsylvania in 2011. My first stop was in Du Bois, Pennsylvania, and I was there for 6 years as the associate pastor focusing on community outreach. And so a lot of what's going on, my heart is always for community outreach, community involvement. And so that's my position has changed, but my heart hasn't. So during this time where people are asking a lot of questions, people in the community who maybe don't have much of a faith or just struggling with their faith, just in times of uncertainty and times of so many unknowns, this has been an opportunity that I've been able to, from a distance or through social media, be able to answer questions and be able to say, where do you see God in this, and what do you see happening through all of this? So yeah, it's been a challenging time for us as well. We have a very wide span of ages in our church. We go from anywhere from children to elderly, and so for a lot of them, it's been a learning curve to try and learn to watch services online rather than coming into a church building. So it's been a transition for us as well, but we've learned a lot.
Thank you. And Pastor Judah Thomas from Word of Grace Church.
Hey, so yeah, my name is Judah. I'm originally from India, not Indiana. I'm originally from India. I grew up there. I moved to the UK. That's where I did my higher education, my undergrad and postgrad studies. A business strategist kind of by profession originally, and worked in HR for a while. And then really felt a calling to ministry to start working with the church. Now, this is something, I grew up in a family that always served in the church, regardless of whether we had a position or a title, so those things became irrelevant really. So when God really spoke to me about really serving the church, like leaving my job, my day job, because I was doing it without that before, I really started to find that empowering people in the community to do what God has called them to do was what I was here on earth for, to really just establish people, encourage people. So I would say in being a senior pastor of a church in town, here at Word of Grace Fellowship in Indiana, I've been here now for 6 years, but my journey has really been to really empower people to step away from the titles of what I would call Christianity in general, but to really spend time investing in the community around them, but also responding to God personally. So that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I love to see people step into what God has called them to.
Well, thank you. And it's so inspiring from everyone. I keep hearing the word community, and that's really what we're about here right now. Can you, anyone can chime in at any time. I'd like everyone to answer all the questions, but anyone can just chime in at any time. During this time, and I know it's been so difficult, can you tell us a little bit about how important your faith has been during this time in COVID-19? I know my mother was a missionary and also a nurse growing up by trade and by school. But one of the things she, taught us, our first recourse is always to go to God first, as far as our faith tradition. And I know during COVID-19, one of the very first things she did was call us, and she all said to all four of myself and my other three siblings, was to, turn our face toward God and really look at what's going on and have trust and faith with Him. Also, they're all nurses out here from IUP, and four of my family members are, two of them, the four, the COVID teams in hospitals. And so they're, face to face with it every day. And, we pray together all the time, to keep them safe and their families safe. And I'm just wondering, how does this challenge your faith during this time? And how do you describe the importance of your faith right now during this time? Anyone can chime in.
I kind of did say a little bit about that when I said people are asking questions right now, and that includes the Christian community. Where is God? Is God, punishing people? Is God, there's a lot of questions, and there's not a lot of clear answers. So faith is definitely important at this time, because maybe the more important question is, what can we do to respond to this? You already mentioned prayer. That has been huge for a number of people. Yeah, we can't get together in the same room and pray, but we can still pray, the same prayers. We can share our requests and pray with one another and pray, and so we have been praying for nurses, we've been praying for doctors, we've been praying for all those essential workers, because they're on the front lines. They're the ones that are, putting their health at risk to make sure things happen. And so we've been definitely stepping up in prayer. But for a lot of us, it's our faith has given us our hope that we know, no matter, even though we don't understand what's going on, we can say God is in control. This didn't catch God off guard. This didn't catch him by surprise. So for a lot of us, it gives us comfort. It gives us strength to say, God, you got this. We maybe don't know what's going on, but you do.
I would tend to agree with that. I think that, obviously there are a lot of scriptures that come to mind when we get involved in these kinds of tumultuous situations and pressures. But ultimately, again, it is God that's doing all of the work. And we know that all things work together for good. And so I think at this point, what I have noticed is that it has actually drawn people closer to God and also to each other, which is a good thing, always a good thing. And the other thing I want to say is that, when you look at the history of the church, every time there was a significant shift in the so-called paradigms of Christianity, it was usually associated or accompanied with a strenuous time. So, for example, when Israel left Egypt, obviously that was under a lot of tremendous pressure coming from Pharaoh and all of the plagues and all of that kind of thing. And obviously, when the Christian church began, we are basing our faith on the resurrection, the crucifixion, and the resurrection of Jesus, and all of that was very tumultuous as well for the church. And so, my experience is that whenever there's a significant move, it's usually accompanied with an amount of turmoil. And so I'm kind of looking at that in that context to say that COVID-19 is a tumultuous and strenuous and stressful time, but I think that it can do something significant in the church if we allow it.
Anyone else want to talk a little bit about? Thanks.
So one of the things that's interesting with the Unitarian Universalist Church here is that we are a community of covenant rather than a creedal religion. And so what that means is, rather than it being, what do you believe? How do you picture God? We're talking a lot more about how we are knitting tight the relationships between us and between the divine. And so in this, what's really important for me theologically to be working with my people is that it's not about what you believe necessarily. That is between you and your divine. But it is about how we act. And that means, a covenant between us is how we keep ourselves in the behavior that makes us a people of faith. And that is as practical as putting on our masks because we care about each other, because we love one another, because we know that my mask keeps you safe and your mask keeps me safe. And that is a practical thing, but it is also a religious and spiritual thing to say, I see the divine in you and I will protect you because of my love for you. So I wear that mask. And when we can make those practical pieces of what's happening in the world a part of our faith journey, that's a way to pray every moment. If you're in the grocery store, you're there with love for your fellow beings because you've got your mask on. That's powerful and protective and loving. And it reminds us of who we are as people of faith. So with a church that contains people who are Christian and people who come from Jewish backgrounds and people who are humanist and people who might be atheist or agnostic and people who are pagan, it's really important to have that common ground of how do we come together to be faithful, to act in faithful ways in the world. And that's what we're really situated on. And I've been so amazed and proud to see how that's playing out with our people really going beyond the just sitting at home to create and to be creative, to make face masks, to start making all kinds of steps to keep people fed and housed and clothed and well in our community. And that's been truly beautiful.
Wonderful. Very well said. I know our pastor, Elder Robert Schofield, God rest his soul, he would tell us all the time that, you can't step over people to try to get to God. And that's that's wonderful that you're, faith and action. And that is wonderful. I want to get to back to Pastor Jay for a minute. We know that you have to run pretty soon. Pastor Jay, can you tell us how you've been able to fellowship along with your congregation during this time? We know, COVID's changed a lot.
Well, yeah, what's interesting is that our congregation, if I can use that term in quotes, has actually grown as a result of COVID. As I mentioned earlier, we have a large student outreach, which we've had for many, many, many years. And because of the fact that we are now solely, exclusively online, both through Facebook and through YouTube, a lot of our alumni are now reaching back and viewing the services and are now messaging us and that kind of thing. And that's been really, really significant because, we have, I like to joke, my wife and I like to joke that if we ever had all of the people that came through the church to become a part of the church, we'd have a mega church right here in town, because we're talking about literally thousands of people. And a lot of the alumni, not all, but certainly a lot of the alumni are now connecting to us. And so all our outreach at this point is exclusively online. We don't have anything face-to-face and no meetings. And we've got a wonderful gentleman in the church who is very, very tech savvy, actually used to work for a technology company. He's now retired. And so we all submit our individual parts to him, and he puts it together every week on sort of a broadcast type of thing. And it's being very, very, very widely accepted by our alums and by our local people. So we're really excited to be able to continue that outreach. And now I'm thinking to myself, when this is over and we return to normal, as everyone says, what am I going to do with that audience?
Right.
I feel like I should keep some pieces of this online outreach because I really have a sense that it's very fruitful and very profitable, and in the sense that spiritually people are being touched and reached, and so we're really excited about that.
Wonderful. I know I did catch one. I did catch one of your sermons, so on YouTube one Sunday I did.
Plenty more where that came from. Plenty more.
Oh, well, I'll be watching. So also my niece, she was part of your church whenever she was here. She's the one that's down in Ashley. She's the one that's actually down in Florida, Jacksonville. She is head of a COVID-19 and I'm trying to think, forget her hospital name, but she's a COVID unit down there now. But she used to go to your church when she was here at IUP in the nursing program.
I remember Ashley very well. I used to always
Yeah.
tell her that she should become a doctor because she certainly had all of the skills, but I think she's a nurse anesthetist or something like that. She's up there pretty high.
Yeah, she is. She's working on her doctorate now, so she'll still have the
Good.
title.
Good.
Yeah,
I wanted her to be an MD, but that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, so did we, but
Yeah.
So just moving on, can you tell us how you think right now things are going with COVID-19 as far as I know you were talking about your outreach that people that used to come to your church are coming, you're seeing them again through your audio and through Zoom, and I know I saw you through YouTube. Can you tell us how that's going right now? When the current service times and days occur? When can someone reach out to you when you're available?
Well, the easiest way to get us is directly through Facebook, which is Victory Christian Assembly on Facebook, or through YouTube, which is, again, Victory Christian Assembly. We have a channel on YouTube of our own. That's the easiest way. You can always message us through there. The services are Sunday at 11, every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. And we keep the services pretty short because our audience doesn't have a long attention span. Our primary audience, the young people, they don't have a long attention span, but we try to make it very impactful. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of us. And Sunday at 11 is the best way to see what's going on. And then the services are all archived, obviously, on YouTube or in Facebook. And then in addition to that, we're going to be starting in June, Friday night Bible study once again, and that will be on Facebook. We're going to be doing that on Facebook at 7:30 on Fridays in the evenings, starting in June. And like I say, that we're getting such a good response that I'm really praying and considering exactly what direction to go down the road, because this seems to be something that we probably should continue doing, even if we, go ahead and come back to having our church services in the building.
I think a lot of people would enjoy that, actually. Also, I know that you're busy and that you have to run. Do you have any closing thoughts before you leave to your next meeting? I know you're quite busy.
Yeah, the closing thought that I have is that I don't know that we should be, this sounds terrible from the perspective of wanting to get back to normal, even myself, but I don't know that we should be rushing to this. We have to function in the right timing of all of this. And I'm not making any kind of a medical or political statement. I'm simply saying that, we're taught in the Bible, in the New Testament, we're taught that we ought to, not try to look too far down the road. We ought to really just basically take one day at a time, because sufficient for the day is its own troubles. And so I'm not looking really, really, really far down the road. I'm just trying to take this one day at a time, and thankful for the grace and the faith that we have to continue on. And I wish that for everyone.
Thank you so much for being with us, Pastor Jay. Appreciate you.
Sure.
Yep.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you. And God bless everyone.
God bless.
Yep. Take care.
All right.
All right, Pastor Judah, great, wonderful, you're there. I wanted to pick back up with you whenever we were talking about the importance of faith during this time, and the relationship that you have. How is that affected, or how has it been affected as far as COVID-19?
I would say a big effect for me personally, but also for those who I would consider my congregation. One of the things that we have really been navigating in this time is the importance of personal faith. As Americans in general, we even like in this conversation, you will hear the phrase that faith community. There is so much of the faith community aspects that only come into play when your personal faith is strong. And otherwise it's all just a good shell game. And I think a lot of what COVID-19 did was expose a lot of places of what I would call empty faith and draw people to places of authentic faith. So I would say in some places where there was just confusion or fear, anxieties, or even confidence, regardless of which side of the pendulum it was, for people to see whether it was on something concrete or whether it was something that was just good speak. In faith communities, we have good, what I would call language we use, which is almost like insider language that people are used to using
Most
around,
definitely.
around conflict, around situations that arise. And it very rarely gets tested. Whereas this was not one of those things that was going to run away in about a day or a week. It's been a while. So it leads people to the point of frustration and then having to find a resolution. And that's led people to really ask good questions of their faith, and then come back to that place of authenticity, which I think for me personally, as a pastor, but also as an individual who's Christian, it got me to challenge good places in my heart, which I had not checked on for a while. So it was good, especially to do with, how do we look at healing? How do we look at confidence? How do we look at caring for one another? Someone touched this earlier, how do you, regardless of where you stand on the issue, if this is a public health consideration, how do I care for those around me? And how do I live in that sense in a community where I might have certain leanings on something, but for the sake of my fellow man and fellow woman, to be someone who can consider people carefully and be thoughtful of them, So I think those are things that have all been exposed in this time, and I think good stuff has come out of it.
Wonderful. This is a question open to everyone. How has COVID-19 affected your services and the people that you shepherd or that you lead? How has it affected your services? Because I know, when we're in code red still, and at least in this county in Pennsylvania. So, social gathering and mitigation practices are being followed. How has that affected everything?
I don't mind starting it. For us, it's kind of like most churches, cause us to get more creative. I think a lot of churches, unfortunately, fall into ruts where you kind of had your worship and you had your message, and there was kind of a formula that we all followed. And then COVID happened, and now our doors are closed. And first off, it was a great reminder that a church is not a building; it's a group of people. It's individuals, as believers that get together. So that was a good first reminder. But then now we're faced with the situation where we're not allowed to meet. So we have to, a lot of churches, myself included, where we weren't putting our services online before, now we're putting our services online, and now we're trying to help some of our members to get connected to the services, and we're trying to pre-record things where our worship ministry had to learn how to do things a certain way. So all the way across the board, what we thought we knew, what we were familiar with, now was kind of thrown out the window, and we're learning new things, and it's been a good experience. And we're still learning new things, where every week it seems like when we get one thing figured out, we have to now do it another way. So it's been great. I know a lot of churches were already live streaming before that, so that's the direction. Some of the smaller churches like myself will be looking at moving into live streaming because we don't know, weeks, months. We don't know what the future is going to hold. And we just want to be prepared for whatever is going to be coming in the future.
Has anyone else found that the live streams, I know Pastor Jay was just saying too, he also believes that he might, keep that aspect running. A great way to outreach people that, that may be inside or can't get to church, or weather, conditions, things like that. Anyone else thinking that is using a lot of social media now that they haven't used before and thinking about keeping that going?
Yes.
Judah, Elizabeth.
We've been, since March 15th, we moved to Zoom, and then we store we store our worship services on YouTube as well. We go live stream on YouTube from the Zoom meeting whenever we can. But of course, there have been some technological hiccups because both Zoom and YouTube have been experiencing such a vastly larger number of people trying to do this thing that we've had a couple of hiccups. But one of the really cool things that has happened since all of this started is that in addition to having more people attending services each week from our own congregation than did when they needed to get all the kids dressed and get breakfasts in everybody, and then you'd be like, well, church started 5 minutes ago and we've still got a 15-minute drive and we're just not doing it this week. Now you just turn on your Zoom and you turn off the camera so no one has to watch you chew and you're at church. So that's been great. But we've also added a whole other congregation. We have a congregation down in Ligonier that's a lay-led fellowship. And they started out just not having services because they didn't have someone who had the technology. And we said, well, there's no reason that you can't worship with us. So we've been having them come to our Zoom, and then they break out to their own coffee hour in a Zoom breakout room. And that's been wonderful. And it's deepening connections between our two congregations. We're hoping that we will be able to use that model in an ongoing way to continue to be a regional presence and less so locally focused and more focused on building a whole network of congregations in the area. That has been really wonderful. And I don't see us going back to having services only in the building and not online, because it's useful for everyone, from people who just can't quite get out of the house on time to folks who are in the hospital or shut in or in a nursing home and can't make it in person, but can absolutely be with us in spirit and in conversation with us and worshiping with the community. So my hope is that we will use the creativity that we've built over these last 2 months to continue to grow who we can be as a congregation.
Wonderful. Pastor Judah?
Yeah,
Also?
so with us, we have definitely moved online. We had been live streaming prior to COVID's appearance, but again, not in the manner that we would have been. So one of the things we're doing is we use a church platform called Church Online, and that's the great thing about that is our people in the church get to engage within real time. So more than just YouTube and Facebook chat, there are more like church features which allow people to engage with certain quotes from the messages, which can be shared on social media. You can do a whole bunch of things like that. But the main thing is getting our social media feeds up and running, making sure that we have good content being put out there. That's been the big thing, making sure that there is content that people can engage with through the week. Stop making it about a Sunday thing. So that's been a good shift. I would say one of the things that we know we will keep doing is engaging the online platform, not just as an extension of the service. I mean, we suddenly discover that doing online community is where the community is at. The thing, and then this is something, I don't know if you check out my own personal profile, I just posted something today called The Church in Online Spaces. And in that video, I really going in depth into what the church and in generally the faith community in this country has defined what community and fellowship looks like. Whereas the world has been doing community differently. And now suddenly the church is like the brakes have been pulled on what you get to define. Now you have to hit people where they interact. So for those I think for people who grew up in church or grew up in faith communities, their feeling of, well, this is not real, this is fake, or this is just like a placeholder. They would be sorely mistaken, because community and really authentic interactions like the ones we're having right now happen all the time, you know? So it is real. I mean, for instance, I live in a different continent from where my parents are. I mean, all of my siblings live in 4 different countries, and all of my parents' grandchildren know them personally, even though it's virtual. So there's a lot to be said for the online space, that people feel like it's not a legitimate, engaging platform to have good fellowship and things like that. But if you get past that mental hurdle, then you start to engage with people. So I think that's where the big gold mine in that sense is for what the church is doing. We need to make sure that we're using our influence well, not just criticizing the online platform as a fake placeholder until we get back to normal. Normal is here now, and you got to learn to adjust to how people interact. While in-person services will be awesome when you can do it, you know, it just makes it richer. Person-to-person contact is rich, but online isn't less significant.
While we're talking about online, can anyone or all of you basically share specifically where you can go, days of the week, times that you're available, or that you do a webcast, or that you reach out to the community in live?
Yeah, there are several places. So on YouTube, Pastor Elizabeth Mount is my YouTube channel. And you can find daily meditations, a couple of songs, some stories for kids, as well as our full Sunday worship services are cataloged on there. You can also go ahead and go to the church's website, and that'll connect you to the website. It'll give you the Zoom link to join us live on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. And it'll also give you links to our Facebook page and Facebook group. Within the Facebook group, we have a few different things going on. Our children are doing a religious education Zoom twice a week, as well as having a religious education afternoons on Sundays at 2 p.m. We're doing a craft and chat with the minister on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. And also a children's movie night on Saturday nights. So we get together, we talk a little, and we watch usually a Disney or Marvel type movie that we have through our church video licensing, and all of that happens on Zoom. So if you join our Facebook group or contact us via the Facebook page, we can get you connected to some of that stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so there's social stuff, there's worshipful stuff, lots going on. We'd love to.
I know I think Saturday, I did get the Facebook announcement for Saturday for the kids movie. Is it let it flow, let it go? What's her name? I don't know.
Oh yeah, we
Frozen.
had Frozen 2
Yeah.
the other day. And it's super fun. We get on Zoom and I've got like 3 and 5-year-old kids telling
That's
me
wonderful.
all about how awesome they think that this particular movie is. Frozen especially.
Yeah,
A couple of them dressed up as Elsa for the event.
wonderful. Yeah, I've gotten a few of the reminders on Facebook, so that's wonderful. So your church uses Zoom, and we do have to say God bless Zoom. It is a free service. I think you get 40 minutes if you're just a lay person. It's like 40 minutes.
Yeah,
that you can get in.
if you're running your own meeting as a layperson, just with a free account, 40 minutes. But you can also set up an event through the church. Just contact, minister at firstuu-indianapa.org. For me, I'm sure most of the pastors here probably have a Zoom account for their church if they're doing that that technology and can set you up a meeting.
Yeah.
For small group, we have some of our small groups that are meeting, and they've got their own little
meetings going on.
and
Yep.
groups on different nights of the week.
And Pastor John, what are you using as far as media? You said that you started some social networking with your services as well.
Yep. So our church website, www.homercityalliance.org, and that has all our messages on there. We also use Facebook, Homer City Alliance Church, for our Facebook page. And then we are on YouTube as well. Pastor John Ditter is the page that we set it up for. So we put all of our services online. They are archived. A lot of I like to use visuals, and so what I normally on a Sunday morning use a PowerPoint slide or a presentation slide. We put all of those as a PDF into our website, and they can also get those online as well, because I just like getting things in people's hands to visualize things, since we're not able to have the screens right now. But we have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have our church website, and they're all archived. It's just a lot of different options for people can go on. We usually post the message. Our normal Sunday services are at 10 a.m. But we do post them ahead of time. So usually by Saturday night, they will be on there each week. So we do try to get them up ahead of time as much as possible.
Do you do a live service as well? Did I hear you say a live service?
We are working towards that.
Okay.
We are hoping within the next couple of weeks to be moving towards live service. Kind of like what Elizabeth said, there are a lot of people who are shut-ins, a lot of people who maybe can't come. So even as we move forward, our next step is to try and do live streaming services. And then even as the doors open again, and we are kind of limited to how many people we can have in the building, we'll continue doing live services to continue reaching as many people as we can.
Yeah, that is a good reminder that even, when we talk about normalcy, how far is normalcy away? Because, who knows when we can, sit together actually, on a pew or a bench or a chair, however. Yeah. So that's wonderful. Pastor Judah, can you tell us when, if you go live, what technology you're using and how people can kind of get a look into your services as well?
So what we do is we use all the three main platforms, which is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we're WGF Indiana at all of them. And one of the things that we have been finding is using smaller nuggets, as it were, rather than big chunks or bigger videos or bigger kind of hosting watch parties, because there's just so much content out there. I mean, people are just inundated with the stuff. So it has to be a little bit more targeted to what we actually want to do. So one of the things that we are doing is we're pushing everyone to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/WGF media. And in there, we archive all of our services, all of our new stuff, like for kids or for, we have something called word bars, which is in our playlist. And that's just like a short 2-minute kind of segment, just like a granola bar of something from the word, just a short word to encourage you during your week. So we do things like that. And the important thing is it's not me. I think that's one of the things that I'm very keen on, is that it doesn't become about the one minister. Because again, just by virtue of how church operates, people tend to just look at one pastor. And I'm really keen on seeing different people in the church who have a ministry or have a gift. This is one of those great times to see it on display. So serving ministries, working in the community, at the food bank, at different places, making masks. There have been some people in our church who've made, I think, over 600 or 700 masks. It's just like things like that, which I was like, you don't realize how much you got until you start putting, taking the spotlight off the stage. I think there is that stage kind of Christianity, which I think I'm glad to be done with. So,
yeah.
So I'm glad that it's now out there in people's personal social media feeds, they share stuff. So it doesn't have to come from the church, but just people in the church just sharing good words, sharing encouragement, stories, things like that. I think that's how social interaction was meant to happen in online spaces, rather than it coming through the branded account all the time. So
Wonderful. It has been so much of an honor to talk with all of you about your faith traditions and how things have changed and the creativity that everyone is using, during COVID-19. This era is really, I think, for myself personally, makes you want to get a little bit closer to, my faith tradition, closer to God, to Jesus, kind of asking, more questions about, for me, it's, what does it look like to be a better mother or a better teacher or a better, community member or a better, whatever. And how can I do that? And then actually, for the first time, having time to kind of sit and just, think about that, and not always rushing to the next thing or to the next place I have to be, or, and I think, perhaps as far as, my belief is that, this is a time that, maybe we just needed, to just rest a little bit. And unfortunately, we have to pray for those families who've lost, members of their family. 65,000 people in the United States. And we need to pray for them. But at the same time, for ourselves, looking at this as something that we can use to kind of rest a little bit, that I think, that we should be doing as well. In closing, I'd like to know if any of you have anything to say as we leave, words of encouragement, words of faith, anything you want to share with our audience.
just one closing thing I wanted to share with everyone is just remember that we are all people who feel. So whatever you're going through, remember that there could be the totally opposite reaction on the other end. So just to be understanding with each other. I think that's something that in our society, especially with all of the things going on politically and just economically, there are so many, we can be quick to say something, but to remember that there's also other viewpoints and to be understanding of others. I think that's a big thing.
Pastor John?
Yeah, I think Judah hit it right on the head. This is a time where a lot of people, tempers are short. People are, I know, especially my wife is with 4 kids all day long. That's a total change for her. I mean, she has a business from home. So there's a lot of people kids are not in school right now when they're normally supposed to be in school. People are normally supposed to be working and are not working. Money gets tight for people. And so this is a time where it's really easy to get angry with each other. It's really easy to allow our differences to cause fights and cause disagreements and short tempers, short fuses. This is a time where we just need to remind ourselves we can really pull together during this time, help each other out, be a word of encouragement. And a little bit goes a long way in these days of just asking someone how they're doing, asking how's your day, how are your kids? And we can't offer to take each other's kids because we can't babysit each other, but it's just really nice to just let a mom, even a dad, know, hey, I know you have your kids all day, maybe that's not normal for you, but if you need to talk, if you need to just, you need an ear to listen, a shoulder to just lean on for a moment, just make ourselves available to each other, because we can be a great support system and just encourage each other through, because we're all going through this together.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And Pastor Elizabeth?
Yeah, just absolutely yes to everything that others have said. I think the biggest thing for me in this is, we draw from a lot of scriptures from the Bible. There is the "as you did to the least of these." And I really want to make sure that people are remembering. I think in these times, it's really easy because we are contained in our houses to turn inward. But knowing that every single person right now is going through a tough time, is going through trauma. People are on the edge of losing houses. People are trying to parent children who are not normally home in, you know, sort of eternally right now, it feels like. Everyone is having a tough time. And the way that you treat the people who it is the hardest to be compassionate with, that is the way that you show your faith and your love to one another. So bringing forth and knowing that deep within you, there is the capacity for love, and that you are still a good and wonderful and lovely person, even in those moments when you are frustrated and maybe you didn't say the nice thing to that person. That there is always space for forgiveness and for coming back. And sometimes you are the least of these who need compassionate too.
Well, thank you all for joining us again today. Again, such an honor to be with you. We appreciate you coming here and just sharing your kind words, words of encouragement, and words of faith. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.